The fighting in Ma'rib intensifies amid government forces advance to liberate the city from Houthi militia. Yemen's escalating war spurs famine and economic collapse nationwide. The United Nations describes safer tanker as global catastrophe at Yemen offshores. Welcome to Yemen Today TV. This is the English news with me, Rushan Fuad. Starting from Ma'rib, the Giant Brigades liberated new areas in Harib. The forces of the Giants managed to liberate 7 villages after fierce battles. Houthi militia suffered heavy losses in equipment and lives. Meanwhile, military sources indicated that the forces attacked Houthi fortifications and liberated large areas, advancing more than 10 kilometers towards Aqabat Mal'a. During the battles, dozens of Houthi militants were killed and others injured. On Harib, the Giant Brigades advanced in the district and close to join the government forces and tribes in Mal'a front. Still in Ma'rib, government forces defeated Houthi rebels from large parts of the eastern Balak Mountain in the southern fronts. Military sources said that the forces launched a military operation and took control of several sites on the Ramla front. Sources reported that government forces inflicted heavy losses on the rebels in terms of lives and equipment. To that end, the Joint Forces Command of the coalition declared that roads linking Ma'rib and Al-Bayda with Harib, Ain, Bayhan and Asailan are areas of operations. The official spokesman for the coalition forces, Brigadier General Turki al-Maliki, called on civilians not to be near these roads as of today, 3 o'clock, until further notice. The coalition declared it as areas of operation that will be monitored around the clock, stressing that any movement of those roads will be targeted. Earlier, leading members of the rebels were killed by coalition airstrikes in western Ma'rib. The media center of the armed forces stated that the coalition targeted a meeting of Houthi leaders on Sirwah front, killing all those who were in the meeting. The coalition also destroyed 3 Houthi military vehicles moving reinforcements at Harib front. Turning to ties, clashes resumed between government forces and Houthi militia in the city. Military sources indicated that fierce clashes erupted between the government forces and the rebels in the northeastern fronts of the city, using heavy weapons. Escalating military action in Yemen displaced more than 15,000 people. Over the past month, killed and injured more than 350 civilians in December, and left the country the poorest nation facing growing hunger and economic collapse, with no political solution in sight. The war also created the world's worst humanitarian crisis, leaving millions suffering from food and medical care shortages, and pushing the country to the brink of famine. More details on this story are within the following report.
Yemen's civil war began in 2014 when the Houthis took the capital Sana'a and much of the northern part of the country, forcing many families to become displaced from their own homes. Escalating military action in Yemen has left the Arab world's poorest nation facing growing hunger and economic collapse, with no political solution in sight. In the 7th year of conflict, the warring parties seem to be seeking military victory, UN Special Envoy Hans Grunberg told the UN Security Council. Hans Grunberg added that there is no sustainable long-term solution to be found on the battlefield, and both sides must talk even if they are not ready to lay down their arms. 358 civilians were reportedly killed or injured in December. Grunberg expressed his concern that battles could intensify on other fronts. There is already renewed fightings in Shabwa. Elsewhere, airstrikes have increased and fighting continues along dozens of front lines as attacks have increased on neighboring Saudi Arabia. Moreover, programs providing food, water, protection for civilians, and reproductive health services were forced to scale back or even close due to funding crises that happened in 2021. Last year's UN appeal for about $3.9 billion to help 16 million people was only 58% funded, the lowest level since 2015, and UN expects this year's aid operation to need roughly as much money. Donors must be urged to sustain and, if possible, increase their support this year. However, the Houthis' escalation must be stopped to improve access for a humanitarian staff and to stop attempts to interfere with their work. Although the humanitarian aid is essential, the biggest drives of people's needs are economic collapse that happened due to the conflict. Humanitarian needs could be reduced by resumption of foreign currencies injections through the central bank and policy decisions to lift import restrictions. Yemenis seem to have lost faith in the warring parties as to think even for a second about the benefits of peace and stability. They've turned to the international community for help. Whether the world takes the crushed Yemenis' complaints seriously or not, that is for days to decide.
Turning to Shabwa, engineering teams of the Giant Brigades cleared the Al Bayhan district from thousands of mines planted by the rebels. Sources indicated that the engineering teams dismounted thousands of mines and explosive devices planted by the militia on roads and civilian areas during the past days. Sources added that the teams are working underway to clear out and secure all liberated areas from Houthi rebel mines. Still in Shabwa, a soldier died by Houthi mine explosion while demining the mines left by the rebels. Sources reported that Musa el-Harthi volunteered with his brother and others to clear out areas from the Houthi mines. According to the sources, he was killed in a mine explosion while he was trying to dismantle it in Usaylan district. To that end, the Yemeni Mine Records announced that it had monitored the death and injury of some 88 civilians due to Houthi planted mines in Shabwa and Ma'rib. The observatory said that it monitored 38 deaths and injuries of more than 50 civilians due to the heavily planted mines by Houthis in Bayhan, Usaylan, Ain in Shabwa, and Harib in Ma'rib. In Hodeidah, 2 children were killed as a result of the explosion of a Houthi landmine. A local source said that the 2 children, Yasser Ahmed and Khalid Abdu, were killed by a landmine explosion in El Khoukha district. This comes 2 days after the death of 2 demining experts working at Massain project in Hais district. The Yemeni government expressed disappointment at the United Nations' indifference towards Houthi militias' use of the safer oil tanker as a blackmail card. Minister of Information Muammar al-Eryani said the Houthi rebels continue to ignore 7 years of warnings from an imminent catastrophe that could be caused for a safer tanker. He denounced the international community, the United Nations, and UNMAHA silence regarding this dangerous threat. He called for a collective and immediate action to avoid the catastrophe. Different local and international voices have raised the concerns over the risk of the potential oil spills from the aging safer tanker. The tanker poses both a local and environmental threat and is also considered a major pitfall for shipping through the critical Red Sea and Suez Canal. Houthi rebels have been preventing UN inspections teams from access to the tanker to do the necessary maintenance. The following report has more details.
An oil spill in the Red Sea would disrupt shipping, and this would be the price of the global economy suffering. A major global catastrophe could happen unless everyone moves faster for a solution. An oil spill in the Red Sea would disrupt shipping, and this would be the price of the global economy suffering. Risk Aware has said a spill could take 25 years to recover from and at a cost of up to $20 billion. Pollution could reach as far as Bab el-Mandab, with some oil reaching the Gulf of Aden. The local impact would see 63,000 fishermen lose their livelihoods. Hodeidah port would close for 5 to 6 months, driving up local fuel prices and disrupting services. On the other hand, a fire would have a similarly terrible impact. Fire on the FSO would cover around 40% of Yemen in Sud, driving more than 3 million farmers out of their jobs for at least a year. Air pollution and water contamination would put more strain on the country's already overstretched health system. There has been some claims recently of leaks. An official in the local government reported that the pipeline from the leak to the tanks was leaking, saying a disaster would happen. Despite repeated alarming voices from around the globe concerning the threat of safer oil tanker, Houthi rebels seem so far taking all such calls and warnings for granted. How far is the patience of the international community on this Houthi political bullying? Nobody really knows.
Coming next. The United Nations says that 8 million children in Yemen need immediate educational support.
راتب الواحد 120 ألف، والكيس الدقيق ب18,000، والكيس السكر اليوم ب20,000. كم يعني بيعطي هذا الراتب كامل بكيس سكر وكيس دقيق؟
المواطن اليمني يعيش في أزمة إنسانية وغذائية مؤلمة من غلاء الأسعار وفحشة الأسعار وغلاء الصرف والعملة الأجنبية في البلد.
حالتي الحين حالة لما أخرج لما ندب إحنا شبكيرة ما نقدرش ناكل الأكل داخل ما إحنا بحاجة صعبة.
Welcome back. The American initiative Education Cannot Wait has called for an immediate intervention to support education in Yemen. According to the initiative, the ongoing conflict in Yemen, coupled with the impacts of COVID-19 and climate change, are putting children and adolescents at severe risks. Children must be protected from the devastating consequences of war and be provided with education opportunities so they can build their own and be part of Yemen's future, the initiative added. More details on this story are within this report.
The war in Yemen waged by the Houthi militias has left approximately 8.1 million school-aged girls and boys in need of education and emergency support. Of the 8.1 million children, 1.65 million are internally displaced and 1.5 million are living with a disability, said the United Nations Global Fund for Education in Emergencies and Protracted Crises. Director of Education Cannot Wait, Yasmin Sharif, said access to safe learning spaces for Yemeni children and adolescents can save lives and sow the seeds for a more peaceful future. Education infrastructure in Yemen is in complete and total disrepair, Sharif affirmed in a statement distributed by the UN Office for Humanitarian Affairs. More than 2,500 schools are reported destroyed, damaged, and/or utilized for non-educational purposes. Conflict and continued disruption of schooling across the country and the fragmentation of the education system have had a profound impact on the learning and overall cognitive and emotional development of nearly all the 10.1 million school-aged girls and boys in Yemen. To make matters worse, 2/3 of teachers in Yemen, over 170,000 teachers, have not received a regular salary for more than 4 years because of the crisis. The New York Education Cannot Wait First Emergency Response Funds support the reconstruction and repair of learning centers and water and sanitation facilities in locations in Ma'rib and the west coast areas of Yemen.
Houthi militia war against Yemenis has destroyed everything. Hospitals, schools, and all public service facilities have been targeted. In other words, Houthis have turned pens into bullets. A live example of this is the state of schools in Hais, where most of the infrastructure of schools has deteriorated further due to the Houthi war. Yet international actors should take responsibilities to support Yemen's education sector. The following report has more details.
Abdul Qadir is a knowledge enthusiast, a diligent student with dreams and ambitions. Similarly to other children to whose ambitions the militias tried to put an end, Abdul Qadir persevered, refusing to succumb to ignorance. He left for Al-Khoukhh along with his family after Houthi militia bombed his school, which was located in Hais.
من منطقة الرون.
اسم سبب نزوحك؟
تفجير المدرسة.
I come from Iran. I was displaced due to Houthi militia's bombing that targeted my school. Every day I walk large distance to get to school.
Following the joint forces redeployment, Houthi militias detonated the school before fleeing Iran village, leaving nothing in their wake but grief-stricken villagers and ruins of the educational institution.
After the school was exploded, students had no school, and the nearest school is about 20 kilometers away. Students cannot walk such distances or find transportation. We call on the authorities to support this village with education and allow students to have the learning.
45 schools are in Hais. 4 of which were utterly demolished by Houthi militia's bombings, while 10 of which suffered partial damages before Houthi mines were detected and cleared out. Other schools were used as barracks for Houthi soldiers and requires serious restoration.
هناك مدارس تم تفجيرها من قبل الميليشيات الحوثية.
There have been many schools that were bombed by Houthi militia. 4 of them were completely destroyed. Those schools need restoration. We call on international organizations to provide tents for the damaged schools to allow students to continue their education.
The militia's assault on education did not stop there. They also imposed a sectarian education upon the student with complete racist ideologies. Parents and educators in Heist Directorate appealed to the state, humanitarian organizations and donors to find alternatives to the schools that were destroyed by Houthi rebels and to save thousands of students from losing their future.
To economy, the Yemeni government discussed with the board of directors of the central bank and the Ministry of Finance the economic and living conditions. The governor of the central bank presented a report on the results of 2021 and their implications for macroeconomic and monetary indicators, and the measures taken by the bank in coordination with the government and the Ministry of Finance to address some of the imbalances. He reviewed the future work plan that will be implemented with the estimated support of the donors and aimed at achieving stability in the currency exchange rate, controlling prices and restoring balance to the macroeconomic system, pointing to the most important contents of this plan of action and the time frame for implementation. Global Finance magazine said that the annual inflation in Yemen has risen to about 85% in 2021. The magazine stated that the annual inflation rate for Yemen at the end of 2021 rose to about 41%, compared to an annual rate of 25% during the year 2020, and a low annual rate of 10% at the end of 2019, according to data from the Central Bank of Yemen in Aden. Inflation has increased in government-controlled areas due to the rise in the price of the dollar in December, an increase of 140% since the beginning of the year. Amid warnings from the outbreak of the 4th wave of COVID-19, the National Committee Against Coronavirus recorded 25 new cases of the pandemic. Committee officials said that there were no recovered cases and no death. With the current updates, the total confirmed cases are 10,218, including 1,988 deaths and 7,045 cases of recovery. Here is a reminder of the main headlines. The fighting in Ma'rib intensifies amid government forces advance to liberate the city from Houthi militia. Yemen's escalating war spurs famine and amid economic collapse nationwide. The United Nations describes safer tanker as global catastrophe at Yemen offshores. This is the end of the news. For more, follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube at Yemen Today English. This is Rushain Fouad. Thank you for watching.